Dear student, welcome again. We were discussing the part 7, that is the theories of the motivation. In the part 7 so far, we have discussed the basic concept about the motivation, the nature of the motivation, the importance of the motivation. We have significantly make a differentiation between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation with some examples. Also, we have thoroughly discussed about the theories of the motivation. The very first theory that we have discussed is the Maslow's need hierarchy theory, and we have understood about the different structure of the human needs. Largely, we have got an understanding about 5 different needs of human being, which influence their motivation level. If you can remember Maslow's need hierarchy theory, starting with the physiological needs, then it moves towards your social, your safety and security needs, then it uplifts towards your social needs, like how you are developing the interpersonal relationship within the organization. Alright, then it moves towards your esteem needs, esteem towards yourself and esteem towards your co-worker, and finally self actualization need. We have taken some examples to understand it. We have discussed some of the limitation part of this Maslow need hierarchy theory. Secondly, in the theories of the motivation, we talk about the theory of Herzberg, two-factor theory. Now, in the two-factor theory, what were the two factors? One was your motivational factor, all right, and another was your maintenance factor. So, motivational factor, like suppose any kind of advancement, any kind of your job role, job itself, any kind of initiative. So, these were some kind of intrinsic motivation, whereas your another factor was your maintenance factor. Maintenance factor, what we have seen, like some kind of reward, some kind of any kind of incentive, some kind of penal action can also act as a motivation. We have like understood the motivation can be positive motivation as well as the negative motivation. All right. Now, with this particular flow of theories of motivation, we will be studying 2 additional theory with respect to how the employee motivation can be initiated and maintained. Remember, we have defined the motivation with respect to the very basic thing, how the employee can be initiated towards attaining a specific goal, and at the same time how the organization is maintaining that level of motivation. Okay. So, in today's session, in the part 7 lecture 34, we will be discussing about the McGregor theory of X and Y. Okay. We will be briefly discussing what are the different assumptions are there, what are the different comparison with respect to theory X and theory Y, as well as its critical appraisal. So, quickly we will be discussing about the theories of the motivation given by the McGregor. Now, before that, let us try to understand the concept about the this particular theory. Okay. Now, Professor Douglas McGregor has established a theoretical framework for motivation for incorporating theories about the human behavior. Remember, like the very first theory that we have understood about the motivation was the theory of Maslow. The Maslow theory was based on how the human behavior exhibit, or like how the different needs or different requirements of the human being is creating the motivation or initiating the motivation processes. Okay. With the same concept of the human behavior as an element, McGregor has also developed the two factor. Okay. One is theory X and another is theory Y. So, McGregor posits that the process of motivating individual entails specific presumptions on the inherent characteristics of human being. So, we will be whatever the theory X and theory Y he has given, we will be looking in the upcoming session, we will be discussing that these theories are totally based on the human factor. Okay. So, let us discuss what are the different assumptions of the theory X. Starting with the very first theory, that is your theory X, let us discuss what are the different kind of assumptions are there, which will be able to understand the different parameters of this theory X. The very first one, the average individual by nature dislike work and avoid if he can. Okay. So, the theory X is, we call it as a negative approach of management towards the employee. Okay. So, employee presume that the individual or the employees within the organization will dislike to work and they will be avoiding any kind of responsibility if given the option. Okay. So, this is the very first assumption. Second assumption is the average person lacks ambition, dislike responsibility and prefer to be led. It means the employee, the average employee within the organization, how they behave. The management assumes that they lack some ambitions, dislike taking any kind of responsibility and prefer to be led. It means they do not take the initiative process, but they will be following if any leader are there to motivate them. Okay. So, this is the second assumption. Third one, an average human being is inherently self-centered and indifferent towards organizational goals. So, third assumption talks about that individual employee will be more oriented towards achieving their own personal goals. What could be the personal goals of the employee? It could be they are more oriented towards their job role itself, whether they are getting the compensation on the time or not, it means the salary and the rewards. Okay. And what are their career progression and all, rather than the organizational goals. Okay. So, this is the third assumption. Fourth assumption, most people by nature resistance to change and want security above all. It means that majority of the employees, they hesitate to make any kind of change in their job role. Okay. And they want job security above all the things. So, this will be this is an assumption that clarifies that human being is always resistance to change. Suppose in terms of the banking sector, you can take it one example. Now, earlier there was no computer being used for recording the transactions. All the transactions in the banks were recorded through some kind of maintenance of the book. Okay. Over a period of time, you will see that CBCS was there. Okay. So, it is like your software which will be recording all the transaction, data recording transactions digitally. So, it will be the employee who should be given training, because they were earlier used to record the manual transaction in the books of account, but now they will be given some kind of training and development program to record the digital transactions in the computers or the PCs. So, the assumption is that the nature of the employee is that they will be objecting these kind of changes, even though these changes is good for the organizations. Okay. And they place job security above all. It means even they or like not doing any activity, or their overall performances is not increasing, efficiency is not accelerating, the priority should be towards the job security. Okay. So, this is the fourth assumption. Fifth assumption talked about the average individual is gullible, not very bright, the ready victim of the schemers. It means it directly talks about the knowledge or the efficiency of the employee. So, management think that the employees within the organization, they are not so intellect that they will be like diverted from any kind of rumors or any kind of like talk within the organizations. Okay. So, these assumptions were there, and based on these assumptions the theory X has been propounded. All right. So, McGregor like identified these factors or these behaviors being exhibited by the employee, and this shows the negative approach of the management towards the employee. Moving beyond, if we have to evaluate based on the assumptions of the theory X, we have to evaluate what is theory X, what are the key points which is derived. Okay. From the management perspective, all right, it is a management perspective. Towards whom? Towards employee. Very first one, negative in nature, like there is lack of trust, lack of beliefs towards your own employee, that they will not be liking the job, or they will be avoiding any kind of responsibility if it is given, they are gullible, they will not be able to perform. Okay. They will be making objection towards any kind of change within the organizations. So, this shows a negative approach or a traditional approach. It is better to say the traditional approach or the old concept of the management of the organization towards your employee. So, very first outcome that we can derive from the theory X is that it is a negative in nature. Second is high centralization of authority. If you can remember in the principles of the management given by your Fayol principles, one of the principles that we have discussed is the centralization and decentralization. So, what is centralization and decentralization? Centralization means like all the authority are kept towards the top management, and you are not distributing any kind of authority towards the lower or the supervisory management. Okay. And decentralization is just the opposite. So, because of lack of trust in your subordinates or towards the lower level management, what the management will do? Management will not give the authority or share the any kind of power towards the employees. So, this is the second evaluation of the theory X. Third one, autocratic leader. Now, we will be discussing in the leadership styles. The leadership style may be of three types. One is your autocratic leader, second is your democratic leader, and third one is the mixture of both, that is laissez-faire. Okay. Now, the autocratic leader is one or the supervisor who will be dominating any kind of decision making with their subordinates. Okay. And they will not listen any kind of suggestion by the subordinates. Okay. He reserve or she reserve all the authority within himself or herself. Okay. These are the nature of the autocratic we will be discussing in the like leadership style in the next module. All right. So, one of the outcome is that in the theory X or the management who follow the theory X, they believe to keep all the authority to themselves and act as a autocratic leader. Next is impersonal relationship. It means there will be no good interpersonal relationship with the superior and the subordinate. It will be highly professional. All right. No discussion about the personal life will be there between your subordinate and the superior. And last one is carrot and stick approach. Carrot and stick approach, it means like you show some kind of incentive, then the employee or the subordinate will work. Okay. At the same time, stick approach is with respect to the penal action. You threat your employee and employee will be negatively motivated to perform any kind of activity. Okay. This is, we call it the carrot and stick approach. Carrot signifies your some kind of incentives, stick approach some kind of penal action. Is it clear? So, these are some of the output of the theory X. Now, we will be briefly discussing what are the action part. Okay. Action part of your theory X. What the management should do? Management is accountable, like if you are dealing with some employees within the organization who are not self motivated, okay, who do not want to take any kind of responsibility, okay, they do not want to have any kind of change in the management, then what should be the action of the management? Okay. Action of management. Very first one is, management is accountable for coordinating the component of productive enterprises such as financial resources, material, equipment, personnel to achieve economic profit. Now, it will be the responsibility or the duty of the management itself, okay, or the organization itself to coordinate the activity. Okay. So, very first one will be your coordination. All right. So, management should ensure a proper coordination of all your resources with your employee to achieve higher efficiency. Okay. Second is about individual, management encompasses the task of guiding their endeavor, their activities, inspiring them, regulating their conduct and adapting their behavior to align with the organizational requirements. Okay. So, it is a like a comprehensive duty for the management to make sure that the employee should be guided, or they should be like inspired, they should be motivated. Okay. So, it should be on the part of the management to motivate the employee for their any kind of future endeavors, for any kind of responsibilities which has been assigned, for the purpose of what? Ultimately accomplishing objective of the organization. So, the employee will not be self motivated under the assumption of the theory X. This is the main point. And the last one, in the absence of proactive management action, individual may exhibit passivity or even resistance towards the organizational requirements. Consequently, it is necessary to convince, incentivize, penalize and regulate them. If suppose, what if management is not doing activity 1 or 2? Okay. So, it is like the output will be that management should convince, or some kind of carrot and stick approach like we have discussed, incentivize the employee, penalize the employee. If employees are given some kind of rewards for accomplishing the objective, it should be there. Okay. If the employees are aware that we are not able to perform the duties efficiently, we will be having some kind of wage cut or loss of job, okay, or some kind of rewards, for example, like percentage of profit, okay, shares. So, this is a positive motivation we have discussed in the last session, and this is your negative motivation as we have discussed in the last session. So, it is on the part of the management what action they should be taking with respect to the employees under the theory X. Now, I hope that you got an idea about what is theory X and what is their assumptions. To summarize, we will be discussing that theory X is with respect to the employee who do not want to work, who are not self motivated, who make an objection toward any kind of change in the management, who do not want to take any kind of responsibility. Okay, so these are the assumptions, these are the evaluations. Okay, like overall what the management think about these kind of employees, and these are the action part of the management, like how the management will be dealing with such kind of employees. Now, the second part is the theory Y. It is just an opposite approach of the management, where the management is totally thinking opposite with respect to their employee performances or the employee motivation or employee responsibility. These things will be how the management's approach are. Now, the theory proposes, very first one is the management. The responsibility of the management entails that the organization of various components within the productive organization to achieve economic and social objective. Okay. Theory wise proposes that the management of the various components within a productive organization to achieve economic and social objectives. So, employees should be integrated with the different kind of activities within the organization for the purpose of what? Achieving the economic and social objectives. Second is, individuals are inherently not passive or resistant to the requirement of the organizations. So, it is just an opposite proposition that employees are taking some kind of initiative so that they can learn some new things, and they are not resistant to any kind of change. So, this is an assumption of the management. Okay. Third one is, employee possesses inherent motivation, the potential for growth, ability to take responsibility, and willingness to guide behavior towards organizational objective. Okay. So, there is an intrinsic motivation within the employees under the theory Y. Now, we know what is intrinsic and what is extrinsic motivation. Ability to take responsibility, the employees within the organization, they are ready to take the initiatives and they are ready to take the responsibility for their action. Willingness to guide behavior towards organizational objective. So, their employees are very much willing to change any kind of their behavior or any kind of activities, like learning new techniques, attending some of the seminar, workshop to increase their efficiency for the purpose of organizational objectives. Okay. Next is, the responsibility lies in the management to facilitate individual in identifying and cultivating attribute autonomously. Okay. So, on the part of the management, what are the different kind of resources within the organization that could help the employee in achieving their organizational objectives. Next is, the primary objective of the management is to optimize organizational condition and operational procedure to enable individual to effectively pursue their personal goal by aligning their effort with the organizational objective. So, it talks about the integration of the individual objective as well as the organizational objective that we have discussed in the career progression of the employee, like how the management is like aligning the individual objective with the organizational objective, and it is one of the principles of your management given by the Fayol, subordinating individual interest with the organizational objective. Okay. So, these are some of the proposition, and some assumptions are also there of the theory X. Very first one, exerting physical and mental work is inherent, just like engaging in play and taking a break. The typical individual does not possess an innate aversion towards the work. If work is meaningful, it should provide fulfillment and can be carried out willingly. So, very first assumption of theory Y is the employee will be very comfortable to work if the work has some kind of meaning. Okay. If the worker feel that performing the activity is ultimately enhancing their own skills. Okay. So, these assumptions or this is the temperament of the management towards the employee. So, the tasks should be divided in such a way that the employee should be able to connect while they are performing the activities. Okay. So, ultimately there will be a positive infuse of motivation towards the work itself. And what we have seen, if the working environment and the work itself is liked by the employees, ultimately their inherent motivation or the intrinsic motivation will go up. Now, the second approach, individual will demonstrate self-regulating and self-guidance in pursuit of goals which are dedicated. So, self-regulation and self-guidance, it talks about the inner motivation, or there will be lack of, or there will be minimum role of the supervisor in guiding the activities of their subordinates. Okay. So, self-regulation means they are the management thinks that the employees are self-motivated and they will be performing their duties by themselves and efficiently too. In addition, external management or the prospect of punishment, there exists an alternate method for encouraging individual to engage in work and attain organizational objectives. Okay. So, point 2 talks about the inner motivation or the self control or the self guidance of the employee. Third one is the commitment to objective is result of reward associated with the achievement. Okay. So, commitment of objective is the result of the reward associated with their achievement. It means the employee thinks that the achievement of the organizational objectives is the ultimate reward that they will be getting. Okay. Avoiding responsibility is the consequence rather than the human nature. It may be that some employee are not able to perform the duties, but it may be because of some other factor. It may be because of lack of resources or any other factors. In the context of contemporary industrial society, intellectual capacity are only partially harnessed. So, it talks about that the individual capacity is boundless, and it is there is no limit of the individual capacity, and it is up to the management that how they are exploiting, rather than exploiting, they are using the human capacity. Okay. So, these are some of the assumptions of the theory X, and evaluation of the theory X, it is more modern as compared to the theory X. The theory Y is more modern, highly decentralized, you believe or you trust your employee. So, you are sharing the authority with the subordinates. Democratic leadership, it means you are discussing some of the problem with the employees or your subordinates, and you are trusting their efficiency. Next is interpersonal relationship, there will be a harmonious relationship with the different groups, with the subordinate and the seniors. Okay. So, ultimately it will be enhancing the efficiency. And last one talks about the unlimited potential. We just discussed that the employees efficiency or their productivity is unlimited. The management should identify and judiciously they should be using the potential of the employee. talking next the difference between the theory X and theory Y. As we have already discussed, theory X proposes that employee do not like to work, and theory Y is just opposite, like work is a natural like rest or play, and ambitious and prefer to be directed by others. Generally they are the followers and they are not highly ambitious to perform any activity, whereas theory Y assumes that employees are highly ambitious to perform any activity. Employee will be avoiding any kind of responsibility and they are seeking any kind of additional responsibility under the theory Y. Lack of creativity and resistance to change, and creativity widely spread in theory Y. Focus on the lower level. Okay. Under the theory X, like in the last motivation theory what we have seen, that supervisory level they are more towards your physiological needs or the safety and security needs, and these types of the employee at the lower level they require the management approach of theory X, where more and more autocratic type of things should be practiced, whereas theory Y both lower and the higher level needs like social esteem, self-actualization needs are the source for the motivation. Extreme control and close supervision required under the theory X. Self-directed, employees are self-motivated to perform any activity. Centralization of authority, decentralization of authority, autocratic leadership in theory X, democratic leadership in theory Y. People lack self-motivation, people are self-motivated. So, these are some of the point of differences we have already discussed it between the theory X and theory Y. And lastly, we will be in very short we will be discussing the critical appraisal of the theory X and theory Y. It tends to make broad generalization and oversimplification of individual by characterizing them in a singular categories. So, although theory X and theory Y is very simple, but at the same time you cannot presume the employee to be of like theory X or the theory Y. Okay. It may be that there will be overlapping of the employee, like some employee may be liking the work that they are performing, but it may be that they are not liking to take any additional responsibility. So, you cannot separate the employee based on the singular fact. Second is, McGregor implicitly posits that the key motivation is within the nature of the job. However, it is important to note that not all individuals seek motivation in their professional endeavors. Okay. So, job as one of the factor is considered as the key source for the motivation. It is true, but not to all the employees. Like motivation can be derived from other factors as well. It could be extrinsic motivation. So, the emphasis is like more oriented towards the inherent motivations rather than the combination of both. And third one, the practice of both theory X and Y can be challenging in the long run. Okay, like for short period of time, suppose the project time is very short, okay, and the time period is suppose 3 to 4 months. In that situation, theory X is more applicable because you need to lead from the front and do not give too much of time towards your subordinates. Autocratic type of leadership will be there. You will not be sharing too much of your authority. Whereas theory Y, if your time period is too much, you can have the theory Y as a management practice. Okay. But in the long run, you cannot use the theory X or the theory Y, because using the theory X in the long run, employee will be like very much frustrated and they will be leaving the job because of too much of pressure. But at the same time, if you are using the theory Y in the long run, employee will be so relaxed to perform and ultimately they will miss the deadline. So, these are some of the limitation of the theory X and theory Y. And if you have to summarize the things we have learned so far, we were discussing the theories of the motivation, and in this session we largely discussed the two factor theory given by Professor Douglas McGregor. And these theory X is and theory Y is like showing the different behavior of the employee. We have discussed the assumption of theories X and Y, made a critical comparison between the theory X and Y, and lastly, what are the different kind of challenges in using this particular theory in the business domain. We have discussed this, and I leave you with some kind of suggested books that will be helpful for you in understanding this theory. And in the upcoming session, we will be discussing the Auchi's theory Z. That's all for the session. Thank you.